Chief Engineer Do-hyun Park was having a quiet day at the United Earth Station horizon. He sat at his desk, drinking his morning coffee and checking the regular system reports. The large window next to him showed the endless black of space, dotted with countless stars. Everything was normal, just the way he liked it. Then the emergency alarm started to ring. Do-hyun nearly spilled his coffee as the red lights began flashing across the control room. He quickly put down his cup and turned to his main screen. A distress signal was coming in from somewhere nearby. "Computer, show me the source of the signal," he ordered, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. The screen lit up with information. The signal was coming from a Neridian merchant ship called the Star Voyager. Do-hyun knew about the Neridians. They were peaceful traders who looked like tall, blue-skinned humanoids with silver hair. They were good friends to humans and often came to trade at the station. But something was very wrong with their ship today. Emergency, emergency. The message played in both Neridian and translated English. "This is Captain Ven of the Star Voyager. We have a critical reactor failure. Fires are spreading through all decks. Our fire suppression systems are not working. We need immediate assistance." Do-hyun's training kicked in. He pressed the station-wide alert button and spoke clearly into his communicator. "This is Chief Engineer Park. We have a Level 1 emergency. All emergency response teams report to Dock 7 immediately. This is not a drill." He could hear the sound of running feet in the hallway outside as people rushed to respond. The station's emergency response coordinator, Hae-Nul Kim, appeared at his door, already wearing her emergency gear. "What's the situation?" Hae-Nul asked, her face serious. Do-hyun showed her the incoming data on his screen. "Neridian merchant vessel, about 20 minutes from our position. Their reactor is failing, and they have uncontrolled fires. Their systems aren't working." Hae-Nul's eyes widened as she read the temperature readings from the Neridian ship. "These numbers can't be right. The internal temperature is over 800 degrees Celsius and rising." "The readings are correct," Do-hyun said. "And it's getting worse. Look at these reactor readings." He pointed to a flashing red graph that was climbing steadily upward. The computer suddenly beeped with new information. Do-hyun's face paled as he read it. "This is bad. Very bad. The Neridians have started evacuating to their escape pods, but—" He paused, double-checking the readings to be sure. "But what?" Hae-Nul asked. "There's still one life sign trapped in the residential section. It's showing as a child-sized signal." Hae-Nul grabbed her emergency tablet and started walking quickly toward Dock 7. "Tell the medical bay to prepare for burn victims," she called back. "And get me everything you have on Neridian biology. We need to know their temperature limits." Do-hyun nodded and turned back to his computer. As he worked, he could see the Neridian ship through his window now. It was close enough to be visible. A large, silver vessel that should have been beautiful. Instead, it was glowing orange from the heat of its own fires, like a dying star. He sent all the information he could find to Hae-Nul's tablet, but he knew one fact would matter most. Neridians could not survive temperatures above 50 degrees Celsius. Their biology simply couldn't handle extreme heat. And somewhere on that burning ship, a Neridian child was trapped in an inferno that was 8 times hotter than their survival limit. Do-hyun looked at the ship again and whispered a quiet prayer. Someone would have to attempt a rescue, but who could possibly survive those temperatures long enough to save the child? Hae-Nul Kim stood at the front of the emergency response ship as it approached the burning Neridian vessel. Through the view screen, she could see the escape pods floating nearby, each one carrying frightened Neridian crew members. Their blue skin looked pale with fear, and their silver hair seemed to glow against the orange light of their burning ship. "Temperature reading?" she asked, turning to her team. "External hull temperature is at 1,200 degrees Celsius, reported Engineer Min Seo-kang. She looked up from her screen with worry in her eyes. "The internal temperature in most sections is even higher. Our normal rescue suits won't last 5 minutes in there." Admiral watched as another piece of the ship's outer hull warped from the heat. How many survivors in the escape pods? 42 crew members evacuated successfully, Min Seo said. But the ship's logs show 43 people were on board. The missing one. She paused, her voice getting quieter. It's the captain's child. The rescue team fell silent. They all knew about Neridians and their weakness to heat. The species had evolved on a cold world, and their bodies started to fail at temperatures that humans would find merely uncomfortable. At the temperatures inside that ship, a Neridian child would have only minutes to live without protection. The ship's radio crackled. "This is Captain Ven," a desperate voice called out. "Please, my child. Rill, still in our quarters." The fire spread so fast. "Sealed in the maintenance shaft. Emergency bubble won't last much longer." Admiral grabbed the radio. "Captain, this is Emergency Response Coordinator Kim. We're getting life sign readings from the residential section. Can you tell us exactly where in your quarters the maintenance shaft is located?" As the captain gave them the location, Min Seo pulled up the ship's blueprints on the main screen. A small dot blinked on the display, showing the child's life signs. They were growing weaker. "Even our best thermal suits can't handle those temperatures for long," one of the rescue team members said. "And the Neridians' bodies will fail instantly if they try to go back in." Admiral looked at the readings again. The ship's reactor was getting more unstable by the minute. Soon, it would reach critical failure. They had maybe 30 minutes before the whole thing exploded. She opened a channel to the station. "Chief Park, we need options. The child is alive but trapped in temperatures that will kill any Neridian rescuer instantly. What do we have that can withstand this kind of heat?" Do-hyun's voice came back quickly. "I'm sending you the specs for our Mark VI thermal protection suit. It's experimental, rated for volcanic research. Might give you 10 minutes in those conditions. But," he paused, "we only have one, and it's sized for a human." Admiral looked at her team. They were the best rescue workers on the station, but this was beyond anything they had trained for. The heat inside that ship was like the inside of a furnace. Even with the best suit, whoever went in would be risking their life. Through the view screen, she could see the Neridian captain's escape pod. Inside, the tall alien was pressing his hands against the window, staring at his burning ship with despair on his face. Behind him, his crew members huddled together, their silver hair dulled by ash and their blue skin marked with minor burns from their escape. The life sign on their screen blinked again, growing even weaker. "How long until the reactor goes critical?" Admiral asked. 28 minutes, Min Seo answered quietly. Admiral closed her eyes for a moment. Someone would have to go in. Someone would have to face that inferno. But who would be willing to risk everything for an alien child? The answer came sooner than she expected. Ji-Woo Lee was checking the thermal protection suit when Commander Yoon-ji Cho walked into the equipment room. Ji-Woo had already started putting on the suit's cooling layers when the commander grabbed their arm. "What do you think you're doing?" Commander Cho asked, her voice sharp with concern. "Getting ready," Ji-Woo replied simply, continuing to put on the suit. "I heard the rescue team's report. Someone needs to go in." The commander shook her head. "You're a maintenance engineer, not a rescue specialist. This is suicide, Lee. The temperatures in there are higher than a pizza oven." Ji-Woo smiled slightly as they connected the suit's cooling systems. "Good thing I used to work in my family's restaurant kitchen, then. I'm used to the heat." "This isn't funny," the commander said. She held up a tablet showing the ship's temperature readings. "Look at these numbers. Even with our best suit, you'll have less than 10 minutes before the heat starts to cook you alive." 8 minutes, Ji-Woo corrected her. "I already did the math. 8 minutes to get in, find the child, and get out." They picked up the helmet and looked at their commander. "That's enough time." Hanul Kim walked in then, followed by 2 members of her rescue team. They all stopped when they saw Ji-Woo in the partially assembled suit. "Engineer Lee," Hanul asked, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Volunteering," Ji-woo said. They turned to face the rescue coordinator. "I studied the Neridian ship's blueprints. I know where the maintenance shafts are. And I'm smaller than most of the rescue team. I can move faster through the tight spaces." Commander Cho stepped forward. "This is not your job, Lee. You're not trained for this kind of rescue." "No one is trained for this," Ji-woo said quietly. "No one has ever had to rescue someone from temperatures this high. But humans." They paused, looking at the burning ship through the window. "Humans are the only species that has lived with fire for over 1,000,000 years. Our bodies evolved to handle heat better than any other spacefaring race. That's why it has to be one of us." The room fell silent. They all knew it was true. Humans had a unique relationship with fire in the galaxy. While other species saw it only as destruction, humans had learned to cook with it, forge with it, and control it. Hanul stepped forward. "The reactor will reach critical failure in 25 minutes. If you're going to do this, we need to move now." Commander Cho looked like she wanted to argue more, but instead she helped Ji-woo secure the final pieces of the suit. "You have a family, Lee," she said softly. "So does that child," Ji-woo replied. Through the window, they could all see the Neridian escape pods. The aliens were watching the humans with their large silver eyes. They had never understood why humans would willingly work with heat and fire. Now they watched in amazement as one human prepared to walk into an inferno to save one of their own. As the suit's systems came online, Ji-woo checked the internal display. Everything was working perfectly. They had 8 minutes to attempt the impossible. "Ready for final suit check," Ji-woo announced. Hanul nodded and started running through the checklist. With each item, the reality of what was about to happen became clearer. 1 human, 1 experimental suit, 1 chance to save a child. The impossible rescue was about to begin. The airlock door opened, and Ji-woo Lee stepped into hell. The first thing they noticed was the sound, a deep roaring that filled the entire ship. Fire consumed everything, turning the once pristine corridors into rivers of melting metal. The air itself seemed to burn, creating waves that distorted Ji-woo's view through their helmet. "Temperature check," Hanul's voice came through the radio. Ji-woo glanced at their suit display. Internal suit temperature holding at 20 degrees Celsius. External temperature. They paused. 1,240 degrees. "You have 7 minutes and 30 seconds of suit integrity remaining," Min Seo reported from the rescue ship. "The path to the residential section should be straight ahead. But be careful. The heat is warping the ship's structure." Ji-woo moved forward carefully. Each step had to be tested. The floor plates were starting to melt in places. The suit's cooling systems hummed loudly, working at full power to keep the deadly heat at bay. Through the windows of their escape pods, the Neridian crew watched in astonishment. They had never seen anyone willingly enter such temperatures. To them, it was like watching someone walk into a star. "First junction ahead," Ji-woo reported. They reached a corner where 3 corridors met. The ceiling had partially collapsed, and flames poured through the gap like a waterfall. "Main path is blocked." Taking maintenance tunnel B7, Ji-woo opened a side panel and crawled into a narrow service tunnel. The space was tight, but just as they had predicted, their smaller size was an advantage. The metal walls of the tunnel glowed orange with heat. 6 minutes remaining, Min Seo warned. The tunnel ended at a vertical shaft. Ji-woo looked up. They needed to climb 2 levels to reach the residential section. The ladder was still intact, but it was so hot it had turned white. Activating magnetic grip boots, Ji-woo announced. Instead of using the ladder, they would walk up the shaft walls. It would be slower, but touching the white-hot metal of the ladder would instantly burn through their gloves. Halfway up the shaft, a warning light flashed in their helmet. The suit's outer layer was starting to fail. Temperature rising in sectors 3 and 4 of the suit. Hanul reported urgently. "You need to move faster." Jaiwu didn't waste breath responding. They focused on each step, ignoring the growing heat they could feel through the suit. The specially designed cooling systems were still working, but they were being pushed to their limit. Finally, they reached the residential level. The door was sealed shut, partly melted by the heat. Jiwoo pulled out their emergency cutting tool. 4 minutes of suit integrity remaining, Min Seo said. Her voice was tense. The cutting tool's plasma beam sliced through the warped door. Jiwoo kicked the cut section inward and entered the residential deck. The scene that greeted them was devastating. Everything was burning. The comfortable family quarters had become a maze of fire and smoke. The ceiling dripped molten metal, and the floor rippled with heat. Through it all, Jiwoo's sensors detected a faint life sign coming from behind a sealed maintenance panel. I found the location, Jiwoo reported. Their voice was calm despite the inferno around them, beginning final approach to reach the child. In their helmet display, the suit's temperature warning changed from yellow to red. Time was running out. But somewhere in this burning hell, a child was waiting to be saved. Jiwoo took a deep breath of their suit's cold air and pressed forward into the flames. Jiwoo approached the maintenance panel, checking their suit display. 3 minutes and 20 seconds of protection remained. The panel was sealed tight, designed to protect against vacuum exposure. Now it was protecting something far more precious. "This is Lee," Jiwoo reported through their radio. "I'm at the panel." Beginning override sequence. The maintenance panel's controls had partly melted, but Jiwoo's engineering experience helped them understand which circuits were still working. They connected their suit's computer to the panel's emergency interface. "Warning," Min Seo's voice came through the radio. "Reactor temperature climbing faster than expected. New estimate gives us 15 minutes until critical failure." Jiwoo's fingers moved quickly over the interface. "Almost through. Captain Ven, I need the family override code for your quarters maintenance systems." The Neridian captain's voice shook as he provided the code. Please hurry." The panel clicked and slid open. Inside the small maintenance shaft, protected by a flickering emergency force field, was a young Neridian child. The child's blue skin had a gray tinge, a sign of heat stress. But they were alive. "I found them," Jiwoo announced. "Child is conscious. Emergency bubble is failing but still functioning." The child, Ril, looked up at Jiwoo with wide, silver eyes. They had never seen a human in person before. The sight of Jiwoo in their bulky thermal suit must have been strange and frightening. Jiwoo knew they had to act fast, but also carefully. Frightening the child could make the rescue more difficult. They kept their movements slow and deliberate as they reached into their suit's supply pack. "Hello, Ril," Jiwoo said softly. Their voice was translated through their suit's speaker in the Neridian language. "I'm here to help you. Your father sent me." Ril's antennae twitched, a sign of hope in Neridians. "Father, is he safe?" "Yes, he's safe. Everyone is waiting for you." Jiwoo pulled out a small device, a portable life support unit designed for Neridian biology. "I need you to be very brave. We have to move quickly." A warning light flashed in Jiwoo's helmet. The suit's temperature was rising dangerously. The outer layer had started to fail in multiple places. 2 minutes of suit integrity remaining, Haenul warned. Jiwoo worked quickly but carefully. They showed Ril the life support unit. "This will protect you from the heat, like a small version of your emergency bubble. I need you to hold very still while I transfer you to it." Ril nodded, showing remarkable calm for one so young. Jiwoo positioned the unit next to the maintenance shaft's entrance. With precise movements, they adjusted its settings to match the emergency bubble's protection level. "Now, Ril, when I count to 3, I'm going to move you from your bubble to this unit. It will feel cold for a moment, but that's good. Ready?" The child's silver eyes met Jiwoo's through the helmet visor. "Ready. 1, 2, 3. In one smooth motion, Jiwoo deactivated the emergency bubble and transferred Ril into the life support unit. The child gasped at the sudden temperature change, but remained still, trusting their rescuer completely. Transfer complete, Jiwoo reported, checking the unit's readings. Child is secure and stable. Through the radio, they could hear Captain Ven crying with relief. But there was no time to celebrate. The ship's structure groaned ominously around them, and Jiwoo's suit warning had changed from red to critical. They had found Ril. Now they just had to get out alive. Jiwoo held the life support unit containing Ril close to their chest as they moved through the burning corridors. The ship's structure was failing faster now, with entire sections of ceiling collapsing behind them. The temperature had risen even higher, making the metal floor plates buckle and warp. Suit integrity at critical levels, Min Seo reported through the radio. You have less than 1 minute of full protection remaining. The reactor will reach critical failure in 12 minutes. Jiwoo checked their map display, but the heat had damaged many of the ship's sensors. Most of the route they had used to enter was now shown in red, completely blocked. Primary route is blocked, Jiwoo reported calmly, even as sweat began to form on their forehead inside the helmet. Need alternate path to the airlock. Inside the life support unit, Ril watched with wide silver eyes as their rescuer navigated through the inferno. The young Neridian could feel the safety of the unit's cold temperature, but they could see the terrible heat attacking Jiwoo's suit. Min Seo's voice came through clearly despite the interference from the heat. Secondary maintenance tunnel on your left should connect to Deck C. From there, you can reach emergency airlock 2. Jiwoo turned left, finding the maintenance tunnel entrance. It was smaller than the previous ones, barely large enough for them to crawl through while protecting the life support unit. The metal surfaces of the tunnel glowed with heat. Suit cooling systems failing in sections 5 through 8. Haenul warned. Internal temperature rising. Jiwoo could feel it now. Real heat starting to seep through the suit's compromised layers. They kept moving forward, using their elbows to crawl through the tunnel while keeping Ril's unit safe. Are you hurt? Ril asked through the unit's translator, noticing Jiwoo's increasingly labored breathing. I'm fine, Jiwoo assured them, managing a smile despite the growing pain. Humans are very good with heat. Did you know we used to cook our food with fire? Ril's antennae twitched with interest, momentarily distracted from their dangerous situation. Really, but fire is scary. It can be, Jiwoo agreed, reaching the end of the tunnel. But it can also help us, if we respect it and learn to work with it. They emerged onto Deck C, only to find the path ahead blocked by a wall of flames. The ship's reactor was releasing bursts of plasma, creating new fires everywhere. 8 minutes until reactor failure, Min Seo reported tensely. Jiwoo, you need to move faster. The suit's warning systems were flashing red across every display now. Jiwoo could feel the heat on their skin, like standing too close to a bonfire. But they couldn't fail. Not with Ril depending on them. Min Seo, they called through the radio, voice steadied despite the pain. I need you to be my eyes. Find me a path through this, something the sensors might have missed. There was a pause as Min Seo analyzed the ship's failing systems. There's a maintenance shaft for the cooling systems. It should be cooler than the surrounding areas. 3 meters to your right, behind the emergency panel. Jiwoo turned, spotting the panel. The ship groaned around them as more support structures failed. Time was running out, and their suit was barely protecting them now. But they had promised to save this child, and they would keep that promise or die trying. The cooling maintenance shaft provided their last hope of escape. Jiwoo moved as quickly as they dared, holding Ril's life support unit securely. The shaft was relatively cooler than the rest of the ship, but that only meant the metal walls were orange instead of white-hot. 5 minutes until reactor critical failure. Min Seo's voice came through the static. Suit integrity is. Jiwoo, the readings are in the red. The suit can't take much more. Jiwoo felt the truth of those words with every breath. The suit's cooling systems were failing completely now. Heat pressed against their skin like a heavy blanket, and their vision blurred with sweat. But they kept moving. How much further? They asked, their voice rough from the superheated air leaking into their helmet. 2 more junctions, Newell responded. Then a straight run to emergency airlock 2. The rescue team is cutting through from the outside. They'll meet you there. Inside the life support unit, Rill watched their rescuer with growing concern. Even with their limited understanding of human biology, they could tell Ji-woo was in pain. The human skin had turned red, and their movements were becoming less steady. "You're hurting," Rill said through the translator. "The heat is hurting you." Ji-woo managed a small smile despite the pain. Just a little warm. Like a summer day on Earth. They reached the first junction, turning left as Min-seo directed. "Tell me about your favorite game, Rill. What do you like to play?" The child's antennae twitched, understanding Ji-woo was trying to distract them both. "I like stellar mapping. Father lets me help plot our trading routes through the stars." "That's wonderful," Ji-woo said, their voice growing weaker. "Maybe you can. Show me sometime." A violent shudder ran through the ship. The reactor was beginning its final collapse. The shock wave knocked Ji-woo against the shaft's wall. They bit back a cry of pain as their suit made contact with the superheated metal, but they kept Rill's unit safe. 3 minutes. Min-seo shouted through the radio. "The airlock is just ahead." Ji-woo could see it now. The emergency airlock's door gleaming at the end of the corridor. But the final stretch was pure hell. The reactor's failing containment had turned this section into a tunnel of fire. The very air seemed to burn. Their suit's cooling system gave one final warning beep, then failed completely. Heat rushed in, turning each step into agony. Ji-woo's skin blistered under the suit, but they refused to stop. "Stay with us, Ji-woo." Newell's voice seemed far away now. "The rescue team has almost cut through. Just a few more steps." Rill pressed their small hands against the life support unit's clear panel. "Please don't die," they said softly. "Please." Ji-woo focused on those words, on the child they had promised to save. With their last strength, they staggered forward through the inferno. Their suit was literally smoking now, the outer layers beginning to char. The airlock was just 3 steps away when the ship gave another violent shudder. The ceiling began to collapse. Ji-woo lunged forward, curling their body around Rill's unit as superheated metal rained down around them. And then, through their fading vision, they saw the airlock door burst inward. Emergency rescue teams in fresh thermal suits rushed in, reaching for them both. Ji-woo's last conscious thought was of Rill's safety as darkness claimed them. 3 days later, Ji-woo Lee opened their eyes in the United Earth Station's medical bay. The first thing they saw was a pair of silver eyes watching them intently. Rill sat in a chair next to the bed, their blue skin healthy again, and their antennae moving with excitement. "They're awake." Rill called out in carefully practiced human words. Captain Ven stepped into view, along with Commander Cho and Dr. Yurisong. The Neridian captain's silver hair gleamed under the medical bay lights as he bowed deeply to Ji-woo. "My child lives because of you," Captain Ven said, his voice filled with emotion. "There are no words in any language to express our gratitude." Ji-woo tried to sit up, but Dr. Song gently pressed them back down. "Your burns are still healing," she explained. "The suit protected you from the worst of it, but you still have some recovery ahead." Commander Cho stepped forward, her usual stern expression softened with pride. "The Neridian High Council has sent a formal message. They want to recognize your actions with their highest civilian honor." Ji-woo looked down at their bandaged arms, remembering the terrible heat. "The suit, did it survive?" "Completely melted," Commander Cho replied. "But the data it recorded will help us build better ones. Your crazy rescue mission might end up saving more lives in the future." Rill moved closer to the bed, carefully placing something on Ji-woo's blanket. It was a small holographic projector showing a map of star systems. "I made this for you," the child said shyly. To show you the trading routes, like I promised. Jiawu smiled, remembering their conversation in the burning ship. Thank you, Ril. Maybe you can teach me about stellar mapping while I recover. The door opened again, and Haenul Kim entered with Min Seo Kang. Both women broke into wide smiles, seeing Jiawu awake. The hero returns, Haenul said warmly. The rescue team wants you to know that the reactor data we gathered helped prevent similar failures on 3 other ships. Min Seo added, your impossible rescue probably saved hundreds of lives. Captain Ven stepped forward again, this time with an official-looking document. The Neridian merchant fleet has requested to establish a permanent engineering exchange program with your station. We want to learn from humans, not just about handling heat and fire, but about the courage to face it to help others. Jiawu listened as Commander Cho explained how the incident had opened new doors between humans and Neridians. Trade agreements were being expanded. Joint rescue protocols were being developed. A single act of courage had built a bridge between 2 species. But for Jiawu, the most important thing was the small blue hand that had slipped into theirs as they rested. Ril had refused to leave the medical bay since they were brought in, insisting on waiting for their rescuer to wake up. Will you tell me more about Earth? Ril asked eagerly. About how humans learn to be friends with fire. Jiawu squeezed the child's hand gently. I'll tell you everything you want to know. But first, you have to tell me about these star maps of yours. As the others watched, human and Neridian began to share their knowledge, neither caring about the differences between their species. In facing the inferno together, they had discovered something more important than their differences, their shared capacity for courage, sacrifice, and friendship. The burning ship had forged more than heroes. It had forged a future where humans and Neridians would face the challenges of space together, each bringing their own unique strengths to help the other overcome their weaknesses. And it had all started because one human dared to enter an inferno to save an alien child.